Welcome back to the Final Fortune podcast. I'm FreedomWaffle. I am a tournament cEDH grinder currently rated among the top players in the world. I am most known for brewing Dargo Thrasios and taking it to some tournaments, and more recently, my time on Blue Farm.
And I'm Memo. I'm also a cEDH tournament grinder, located in Germany. I usually play online events or the local events we have here. I also do cEDH coaching. I'm mostly known for playing Turbo Nagila, but recently I've been fooling around with different archetypes and also different decks.
In this episode, we're going to talk about some recent tournament performances. We're going to have an awesome interview with Rebell, and we're going to talk about lying in cEDH. We're going to talk about cheating in webcam tournaments, and we're going to go over some opening hand decisions that we had from our recent tournaments, as well as upcoming tournaments. So stay tuned for the episode.
Let's kick off with a recap of some recent events. Let's start with BallonCon 2. It's the biggest cEDH tournament we had in Germany thus far. We had 113 players. I think a couple of more signed up, but in the end, 113 showed up, which is already like a tremendous number for Germany. It was a great event. We had people from all over the continent, from other countries. They visited, and it was like I had a blast. A lot of friends visited. Pontus came all the way from Sweden. We had people from Slovenia. We had from Hamburg. A lot of good cEDH players. Eisenherz came over from Berlin. I had the time of my life. Sadly, it didn't go as well for me. So I brought back Turbo Nagila with like some adaptations I made. I put in some cards I thought would like do well. They actually never came up. I ended at, let me check, 58th, I think. So my Swiss record wasn't the best. It was 1-3-1. I started with two losses, and then I tried to win again on the third round, obviously, because I was basically on my winning in round 3. So I needed to win 3 in a row. And then we drew round 3, and then I already knew, okay, I will never ever make the top 16 cut. In round 4, I was on the play again. I was happy about that, and sadly, I had a turn to Norse on the play. All my opponents were tapped out, but I ate the Force of Negation.
No.
Honestly, like getting my stuff countered was kind of the name of the game that day. I'm looking back at the tournament. I was happy how I played. I think I was not afraid to jam my wins. But they just always had an answer. But that's how it is sometimes, right? There was an MBT, which was like the last card in hand, when I had my Culling Ritual power play. I had to turn to Norse. I ate the Force of Negation after they played like 3 rocks and a fish. So I was like confident in resolving the Norse, hopefully. Backfired a little. But I got a consolidation prize. My last round was on stream. And although I was lower in the bracket, the top table I did, and then I got some screen time from my good friends from Oops All Sold, who did the stream coverage there. Big shout out to them. They did an awesome job. And I won my last round going fourth. That felt good, at least. Yeah, got to show off a little with like Nagila Samut. And that was fun. And yeah, like the whole event was super well organized. They did an awesome job. I think it went like, let me check. We started at noon. Yeah, it went like 14 or 13 hours until the finals were done. So I think that's not the worst, honestly, for a 5-rounder. And we had some breaks and just had a great time overall.
And
all my friends did well.
Yeah, your brother, right?
Yeah,
did really
my brother. Came out of retirement for the local event. Pingmeister Pong, Kinnan Prodigy, Kinnan One Trick Pony. He loves the deck and he did very well. Sadly, he mulled to 4. He kept a no-lander, so in the finals, and still played really, really well. Like where to interact, how to interact. I was really proud of him, but sadly he just missed the land drops. The lands came in too late, and when he was set up to win, the Drenet already hit the field, and TNK brought the W back.
We were all rooting for him in the finals, but it was sad.
Yeah, he did pretty well. Talking about W's, Evan, how was your Mox Masters February going?
Yeah, so I played Mox Masters February. I decided to bring Dargo Thras, which is, of course, the deck that I originally was known for, and I've been off it for a while, but it felt really good to bring back Dargo. Yeah, I ended up taking first in the whole event. I just got some awesome draws, had some really good games.
I have to interrupt you. I just have to ask you, why did you play Dargo Trust?
Well,
I heard a story.
Yeah, Vanilla Midget, Punchy, and I all the night before were like, okay, we were all gonna play different decks at the time, and then we decided last second, like, let's just all just bring Dargo and see how it goes. And of course, Vanilla Midget, funny. He is Sean. He's known for Dargo Thras. He's the one who. He's the reason I even picked up the deck. Mox Masters December 2022 was the first time I ever saw the deck, and I was playing Marnius Calgar, which was the other deck I almost brought, funnily enough. But I saw that deck, and that's why I picked it up in the first place, because it just looked so cool. But yeah, decided to jump back on it and got really rewarded. I was not expecting to take first because I've been fighting really hard with Blue Farm to get a first place in a large event, and haven't been able to get first in a 60+ player event with Blue Farm. But of course, I go back to Dargo, and
and it
immediately win. It's so weird. That's just how cEDH goes.
You back. Yeah,
I think
how it is sometimes.
Some takeaways are, of course, like when you're not playing. I think I would consider, and most people would consider, Blue Farm the best deck in the format. So when you're not playing a deck like that, I do think you aren't threat assessed as highly. So sometimes people are less likely to counter your value spells versus a deck like Blue Farm, and you can get away with a little bit more. Also, it is a little bit harder for you to win a lot of the time, so people give you a little less respect. But then, of course, one dockside and you're winning the game. So obviously, I still think Dargo can put up results as we saw.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it's like always hard to evaluate the Timur decks, like mulligan wise, because they always do try to storm, but also are good at grinding.
Yeah.
And I think this is what people are like, okay, he kept a 5, but you never know, is it a like Storm 5? Is it
or a Thrasios 5?
Or is it a Thrasios into Cradle?
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff. And I think this is for people hard to like evaluate, and not that easy to play against it, unless I think what Timur really suffers from is like hardcore stacks, which isn't like very prevalent anyway.
Interestingly enough, I don't know. I feel like the stacks matchups are like weird. Like you'd expect, what you're saying is what I'd actually expect, except for the fact that like looking at my like game data, because of course I like track the matchups I have. Stacks is like the best matchup for.
Interesting. Maybe you get your Thrasios plan. I guess.
Yeah, because
you're right.
We have the hard pivot.
Dargo also beats like for. 3 times.
Well, I think what ends up being is just like you have Seedborn Muse, which it just beats a rule of law like almost every time, unless you're too far behind, of course. But like, so that pivot is really powerful. But yeah, I mean, it felt good. I'm probably gonna be I'll be switching it up maybe a little bit more for some upcoming events. I still want to bring out Marnius Calgar. I think that deck is awesome.
Oh God, please don't.
No,
put it away.
It's gas. Yeah, definitely felt good to be back on Dargo. So.
Love that. Congratulations for that clutch W. On the 17th of February, we had the From the Vault Anniversary cEDH Time Twister event. This was a 76 players event. Some of our friends played in that event, and we also want to highlight it because a Time Twister is a huge prize for a sub 100 person player event. It's like crazy to me, but I'm super hyped and happy for everyone who competed. We had a very interesting top 4. We had Tameshi, which is a blue-white control deck that also like loops Lotus Bloom. So super interesting land artifact shenanigans. Which
and that was Naestrom, our friend, piloting.
Yes, exactly. Jason Baird, aka Naestrom, who played that deck. We had Connor on Dargo Ikra, also like a great pilot who just puts in like absurd results. Like I think it was like his 4th final in a row in larger and smaller events.
He doesn't go to every tournament, but he crushes it every time.
Yeah. And then we had Sam Black, a Hall of Famer, Magic player, on his Roger Thrasios. I read some of his tweets. He was like super happy how the deck performed. I think he said the only games he lost were the games where he didn't got the turn 3 in the Swiss. So he feels very comfortable on the deck, and definitely go check the list out. And for the 4th player was our good friend Sharky on his good old Tavish Chrome list. You know him. He's the Tavish Chrome player out there, with like also one of the best cEDH players out there as well. Insane results. Another top 4 under his belt. Congratulations. Tameshi won. I think they split
Yeah, they split.
Basically, what
they
they
each
did,
got
I
a
think
corner of the twister. Yeah.
Yeah, they pulled out the scissors and started cutting the twister, but no. They took like store credit.
Yeah.
Please don't get a heart attack, dear listener. They split for store credit. I think it was like around 1K per player or a little more. But they played the game out, and Tameshi won. Early heuristic study wins games apparently. From my understanding, Connor had a very solid win attempt, and if the heuristic study player, so Nystrom, and at that scenario, had like 3 draws to find an answer for the storm turn from Connor, and those 3 heuristic draws found him the counter spell to stop Connor, and then they untapped and basically shortly after won with Lotus Bloom.
Sometimes they just have
so
it.
Definitely,
sometimes they just have
that's how it is, and I don't think it's like wrong to go for it. Like I mentioned that at my tournament, I kept a turn 2 nose on the play, and I saw land Soul Ring Arc and Signet Fish, and I still jammed the turn 2 nose because from my understanding, it doesn't get better if I don't jam. Maybe they have it, but don't be scared. Only because they have the counter spell, that doesn't mean it was the wrong play to go for it there.
Yeah, sometimes they don't draw it, to be frank, and your window might just get smaller. I mean, obviously there's multiple ways to play, but like when you keep a hand that's all in, often you should just jam.
Yeah.
So,
but we often remember those times they stopped us, and then we start second guessing ourselves. But when we play those tournaments, we play those fundamental turns. We should try to not let those second guesses, get in our head, and just do what we are used to do what we are training to do, and this is playing a turbo deck aggressive and confident.
Absolutely. And the last tournament we're going to talk about today is a local 1K from my local store here in New Mexico. It's Tavern of Souls Gaming, and it was their grand opening to their new location. So it was a 38-player event, and I ended up taking first on Tim Necrom, went back to Blue Farm.
Another dub.
Yeah. Of course, it's a little bit of a smaller tournament, so, but the top 4 was myself going second on Tim Necrom. It was Ken Bauman, who is the Kurark Sakashima master, on his tried and true deck, Kurark Sakashima, which is always a blast to see him play. And in 3rd seat, we had David Daniels. He was on Talion, the Kindly Lord. And in 4th seat, we had Michael Rodriguez on Obnixilis. I ended up jamming a turn 1 Ad Naz going second, but Ken had the force backup. But I drew crazy and ended up winning on turn 4 just because I had the nut draws. But we'll talk about that more later when we go over the mulligan.
And for our next segment, we already teased a great interview guest we have for you today, our good friend Rebell. She's a YouTube content creator. Go check her YouTube channel out. Great stuff. Love her shorts. And thanks for being with us, Rebell. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Rebell, we have a couple questions for you today. We wanted to know how your time grinding 60 card has influenced your deck building and gameplay in cEDH.
There's like a lot that changed, and I've been thinking about this a lot. One of the biggest learnings I had from a cEDH player to a 60 card player is like being extremely clear with like the intention of the cards in my hand and like what my game plan is, right? Like in 60 card, it's a lot easier because there's like 4 copies of each, and like the meta is like very defined the way it is defined now. But like if I open a hand in like Pioneer and I know generally what my opponent is, let's say I have a turn 1 Thoughtseize, like I know already in my mind, like who, based on my opponent, what this Thoughtseize should be hitting, right? So when I go through coaching, I'm like, when we do our mulligans, a lot of people will say like, oh, I keep this because it's got mana, it's got like a payoff and like this interaction, right? And I will like press them a little further, like, why is this interaction good in this pod? What exact card are you worried about with this, right? If you can answer this, what are things that they could like interrupt you with that you can answer with his hand, right? So there's like a lot more information that playing 60 card has taught me to just like really drill down on being super clear, which goes into being confident. As a cEDH player, I think like it's hard to be confident in the beginning because there's just so many ways you can die. Right? There's just like so many ways you can die, so many different like compositions of pods, and just so many ways the game can go. In the early days of cEDH, you're like, is meme bet even good? I don't know. There's like so many games where like your meme bet's bad, right? Like it's just like a lot of answers are wishy-washy because it's hard to like be confident. But these days, I'm gonna go in thinking my matchup should be played this way, and if I die and if I lose, we'll change next time and find a different way, right? And I think in cEDH, that's also something that I ported over. So there's a couple ways that deck building has manifested. And actually, like when I first started refining like my T&K list, which had no Nas, but we're back on Nas again because I want to win, was I played Solitude, Subtlety, and I also wanted to try Commandeer. Reason why I did this, Timna Crom, the main choke point is mana, right? Because your commanders like just draw a bajillion cards. It's basically Crom. In the right metagame, in the right texture, you're unbeatable because of the way how other people are like metagaming you, right? So as long as you have mana, you will never lose. Like, you know, you'll lose, but like you'll generally draw enough resources to exhaust the table. So if mana is our choke point, I thought like, well, when I played 4C in Modern with like Up the Beanstalk, we just played our elementals at like a really bad rate because we're going to outdraw our opponent. We'll like pitch all the cards we want because every time we play an elemental, we draw a card back, right? When I was playing T&K, I was literally discarding cards on my end step because I can't spend it all. Like I just don't have mana to do it, especially the One Ring and stuff. If I have a Mystic Remora up and I'm tapped out and I draw Solitude or Subtlety, you know what? I'll just Subtlety your thing. I don't care because I'm going to draw 5 cards later again. I was trying to figure out if this was the metagame, how can I design my deck list to precisely answer or disrupt enough of like the tier 1 decks with as few cards, or like make my cards do as much work as possible so that I don't lose to them from like a control perspective. So I think like that was very helpful from 60 card.
Totally. And one thing that's really interesting is breaking away from these meta standards that keep happening in order to try these cards, because you're not going to know if they work unless you try them. I might be going in and trying a card and be like, I'm expecting this to fail. But if you don't try it, you're not going to break away and you're not going to find that new tech. Mindbreak Trap, for example, didn't used to be in any decks until this year, basically, or last year.
Fervent Alchemist Kai was like the first one who started suggesting it, and people were like super sus of it. And now it's everywhere. A staple, right?
Because they just realized after playing it, this 4-mana counterspell seems bad. Well, it's online so many times and hits the payoff so many times. And just like in a deck where people are sometimes even turn 1-ing, but often like turn 2, turn 3 wins, you're gonna have to tap out sometimes, and having as many free counterspells as possible is really important. So I guess the point here is like, I really support that. Try things, even if you're wrong, that's good, that's fine. Just learn from what was good and what was bad. The last topic we want to talk about with you today is lying in cEDH. I am sure you have been on Twitter and seen all of the discourse there. And yeah, there recently was a tournament video posted about someone saying they weren't going to go for it to have people not crack their treasures in response to their dockside. And then afterwards, they ended up going for it on that same turn. And this was a top 16, so they got top 4 because of it. What is your opinion on lying in cEDH?
You know, I actually didn't want to talk about this on Twitter.
Me neither.
But I started writing a thread, and I was like, nah, nobody needs this. So I get to talk about it here, which is kind of cool. We should all have like sportsman-like conduct, right? We should all try to be like, you know, moral, upright, good players. Some people compared the lying to the same day that Mengu put back the counterspell from his opponent.
Right. I know.
In the NRG. Because that's showing integrity in the game, right? My hot take is that I think you're not afforded integrity until you're successful. Any random person can be an upstanding player, but because Mengu's very like performant and really good at the game, the integrity there then like adds to it, right? Which kind of ties to what I'm saying here with my experience is like nobody remembers, you know, how kind of a player that I am. People only remember kind of like me as a competitor based on my results in cEDH, and I haven't like competed in a long time, right? So until I top 16, until I top 4, generally people are like, oh, I guess they're a nice player, but like no one talks about that. So related to this idea of like, I guess, integrity and like being like morally upright in these games, I think as long as the game action your opponent is taking is legal within the confines of the game, like you just have to respect it. I think it's your fault for losing to someone who lied because they wanted it more and you fell for it, right? Like you decided as like, you're within your own moral values or whatever that like they should stay by their word, and you're going to stay by their word, and everyone's going to be that way. And that's how the game should be played, right? And if like your opponent lies and you lose to it, that's just like a thing that you have to accept, right? Because you've decided based on your moral code that that's how you should be playing the game. And I think that should be an outcome that you should accept. Like if I decided that I'm gonna be neutral and not like leverage my yapping and my clout to like dictate players, I should be also accept the fact that I'm gonna lose more games, right? I'm not gonna take that percentage. So I think like that's kind of like my thoughts about it. Like I'm just gonna respect my opponents are gonna lie no matter what. I'm gonna play like I'm gonna play as cutthroat as possible within the confines of the game, because this ties to my RCQ experience. Sometimes I let people do takebacks, like really boneheaded takebacks, and those takebacks eventually ladder up to me losing that game, and I haven't qualified for this goal that I've like really set my eyes on for a while because I was kind, right? And do people remember Rebel as the kind player? Not really. People will remember Rebel as the person who went to the RC, right? So why would I leave those percentages on the table?
And I think that's a really, really interesting take, and I think that's an awesome way to look at it, because at the end of the day, like if we're playing in a tournament for money and they win, to a degree it doesn't matter how, as long as like of course it's just within the confines of the rules. Absolutely. I do think one of the things that we've seen, of course, is if you lie, I mean, it's not going to happen like this every time where your video of you lying blows up on Twitter. But I do think that even now, even though cEDH has grown quite a lot, we are still a relatively small format. And the people who play in tournaments, you're likely to see them again if you're continuing to play in tournaments. And so you are definitely going to have a higher chance of winning the game that you are currently playing if you lie and are able to win because you lied. Absolutely. And that's going to raise your win percentage in that game. I don't disagree with that at all. And I don't think there's actually a problem with that. Like, I think like I would be frustrated and your opponents probably would be frustrated, but like it's fair. And at the end of the day, you're going to win that game. Yeah, absolutely valid. The reason that I choose not to lie, and I will absolutely mislead, I think to me there is a difference there, but I choose not to lie because I think that I will lower my win percentage in the future. People will believe me because they know that I have not lied in the past in these games. People will remember, and especially if people know who you are, they might even spite play against you for it. The social aspect and the diplomacy, if you will, of this game definitely changes it from 60 card. In this case, I've seen a lot of 60 card players, like solely 60 card players, tune in and be like, why would you ever trust an opponent? The reason sometimes you need to work with your opponent / trust your opponent is because you cannot stop everyone alone, and you do need to work together towards the common goal of stopping whoever's winning. If you just decide to use every single game action, so for this example, if you crack all your treasures just to make sure they don't get any mana off their dock side, now you don't have mana up for the next player trying to win. You know, obviously, like that is a very, very important thing to consider. You can't just never trust your opponent, period, because then you're also going to leave some win percentage on the table there because you weren't able to make a deal that would win you the game, right? I think it's absolutely fair to lie. I don't think it's necessarily going to make you a bad person or a poor sportsman, but I do think that like you're losing out because of this, and most people, I think it's going to be detrimental to your overall cEDH career if you lie.
So I don't want the takeaway from this for people to be like, oh, Rebel says you should be lying in all your cEDH. Take every percentage point.
Rebel, I'm only taking your worst quotes and I'm going to put them on screen, and that's it.
Good. I have to get popular again somehow. Personally, like I wouldn't like lie because you know, aside from the fact that I have like a content career and all that, I just don't. That's just not how I would want to win, right? Like it's kind of the same thing. Like someone asked me like if I paid, like would I pay money to go to qualify for the RC if I could? I'm like, no, that's not the way I want to do it, right? It's like the same thing. If I win an event, I want to win it my way, right? But if I win it my way, I also just have to understand that there are drawbacks in what I'm doing, right? And accept the fact that that's the outcome. And also, I'm just going to treat all my opponents with like, they're playing to win to the best of their ability. And I'm not going to like, if someone tells me they put a silence on the stack with bajillion mana and be like, oh, this isn't a win attempt.
Yeah.
there's two outcomes, right? There's only two
Right.
outcomes. one it's true, they don't win. The other one, they lie, and why lose, right?
Yep.
And based on those two outcomes, you just have to make a decision based on the
Yes.
resources you have, right? Like that's it. Like
Yeah.
if I have the resources to stop them, and I decide to get greedy because I trusted them on their word, and I lose, like that's on me, right? If I had no resources to stop them, like I don't really have a choice in that matter, and then I can't be mad if they lied. It's like it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think like that's kind of like the layer of like decision making that should go into these kind of social, I guess, plays, not plays, is like based on what they're communicating and what they're suggesting, how many real options do you have, right? And are you and what are you willing to gamble based on like their word?
Yeah.
Because they're here to play to win, right? Like if this was for a time twister or something, or a Black Lotus, if that person wins a Black Lotus, I don't think they care if they have to win.
Right.
Or the tournament.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, they're
Also,
just like, I'm good, I'm done.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
I think so. I think it's very nuanced. I think the stakes definitely play a role. I'm also more in the camp of not lying, because I think, and that's like, I think a lot of people that don't play cEDH got upset over this. Whoa, why would you ask your opponent if he's winning here? Like, this is such a stupid question. I think it's very important to stress that cEDH is not really a free-for-all four-player format. It's more of a 3v1 all the time.
Yes. Absolutely.
So most of the time you have two allies and one opponent until the very second you're trying to win. Then you have three opponents.
Yeah.
And
And-
if you're not playing it like, or not understanding it like this, you might get confused about why are they doing deals anyway. But from my perspective, I always want to have two allies. And I think in every game, in every tournament I'm playing, and I feel like if I would like lie often or use this as a strategy, I would have less allies in most of my games, which would lead to less windows for me to either stop people or, after stopping people, trying to win myself. But again, if there's like you said, a Lotus or I don't know, Tabernacle, Bazaar of Baghdad, like a little bit, when there's a lot of money on the line, I don't know if I could resist.
Yeah, like
It's hard to say until you're there.
there's one game you were playing, Evan, against Jorman. I think you won this game.
Was this
with,
the
Smothering
the
Tongue.
boil? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And everyone like in my group chat that was watching it was like, why would no one counter that Smothering Tide? Anyone can see from like, a mile away
thought
that
the
Smothering
same
Tide's
thing,
gonna
Rebel.
win the game.
That was the WinCon. Yeah, that was the
But
WinCon. Yeah.
It is, and it is the win con. Like that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing that like if you give time, Evan wins the game. The problem is we're at the point of no return, right? Everyone has X counter spells. The Smothering Tide represents a win, but not right now. So you basically cannot answer that because the next person afterwards is
Will instantly
posing
win.
something more lethal.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%.
So it, like I think it ties all around the idea like the power level of this format is so insanely high after like the early turns that it just warps our decision making. Then you have to like kind of use all the tools you have, including social like play or politicking, to like try to survive to the point where like you can put your win on the stack.
All right, Rebel, thank you so much for joining us. I think that interview was really enlightening. There's a lot of nuance to cEDH, and people can learn quite a lot from someone like yourself who's been around for, a lot of the history of cEDH.
That's high praise.
And been learning and improving that whole time. Can you tell people where to find you, what you do, etc.?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube and also on Twitter. Just remember, when you go look up Rebel Sun, there's 2 L's. But the 1 L is a very different channel. You don't want to go there. So you can find me on YouTube. I do kind of like all sorts of Magic content. I do still a lot of cEDH, and moving forward, it'll be a lot more cEDH. So you want to hop in on that. Also, if you like kind of hearing all this strategy stuff and like deep quote unquote deep thinking, I also have a lot of articles on my Patreon that you might want to subscribe to. So that's where you can find me.
You do coaching too, right?
I do. It's extremely limited because I have no time.
Oh no, I shouldn't have advertised it.
But yeah, if you want to be my one student for the month, you know where to find me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rebel.
Thanks for
Thank you.
joining us, Rebel. That was great.
It was really fun.
And for our next segment, we have to talk about something annoying, something that's a little exhausting if you ask me, cheating in cEDH. There was another cheating incident in a cEDH online tournament. And yeah, it keeps happening, and it's just sad to see.
Yeah, so in round 5 of Chaos Treasure Series 11, there was a player who had a turn 1 protected Thoracle win. So all of their cards in hand, including the card on the top of their deck, gave them turn 1 Thoracle with force backup. Now, this is not an impossible hand to just draw naturally. Of course, there's natural variance. This can happen. However, the players, of course, were very suspicious immediately. This was on the play, right, going first, and first 7. So very, very unlikely. The odds are very low. So they went back and reviewed the footage, and I'll show you the footage now. Hold on, I don't want to say it like that. So they went back and reviewed the footage, and they found that this player, while they watched their shuffling, never changed the top of their deck, and that was the pile they got with the Brazilian cuts. So basically the player shuffled each pile individually and shuffled the other piles more than the pile that, you know, could have been stacked, the pile that they received. They only shuffled the bottom half of it. Furthermore, they did not declare which pile was 1 and 3. So there was a higher chance that they were going to be able to get the pile that they could have potentially stacked. So in other words, if the other players gave them a cut of either 1 or 3, they could still just choose the pile within, reasonable, without reasonable doubt that is the, that would be 3 or that it would be 1 because they didn't label the piles. After that, again, they drew the exact perfect 8. There's basically no better hand than a turn 1 protected win, pretty much. This is round 5 of a win and in, so definitely like high stakes. If they win this, they get top 16, which they did get top 16. So what we're going to talk about is handling cheating in cEDH, and this is an incident that has been brought up again and again, and there are some issues that we've seen that we want to address.
So first things first, I really want to address here is that the other players did the right thing and recording their game. So
Absolutely.
Only because of that, people got to review it, and actually the attention was there. If you don't record your game and somebody does those shenanigans, this kind of cheating, they will get away with it because there's no proof to prove that they cheated. So it's very important to do that, and I'm very proud and thankful that the other 3 players were vigilant and recorded their games and immediately sniffed it out and watched tape.
Absolutely. However, they brought this to the judges and the tournament staff immediately. And again, so this is round 5, right? It's a 80-minute round. They lost on turn 1. So they brought it up to the judges about 5 minutes after the game ended, meaning there's still, I'm guessing, about an hour. Yeah, a long time for there to be a decision made. Obviously, this is hard. This is in the middle of a tournament. There's other things going on. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's not an easy decision to make to act on someone cheating. However, the judges and the TOs decided not to move forward with disqualification from this, and they decided to let the player go in top 16. They warned the player that these were bad shuffling habits, and they watched the player closely in top 16 and were able to DQ them for the same so-called bad shuffling habits. However, of course, now, because of this, these other players, none of the players in that pod who had a chance of winning were able to make top 16. This was a win and in, right? So if they won, any of them would have been in top 16. And it knocked the 17th player out of top 16. So there are definitely some issues here. And let us know in the comments down below if you think this was cheating. Definitely, if the top of their deck did not change from the moment it went on camera to the moment that they got those same cards in hand. Obviously, we didn't see them stack their deck because we don't have footage from before they entered the spell table, but this looks textbook cheating to me. And so in my opinion, I think if there is something that is, they could have clearly cheated. They had an amazing, unbelievable start. This should be acted on, or at least they should be removed from the tournament until they can do a further investigation of other games to see if there's a clear pattern. But in my opinion, I don't think with this evidence, since the evidence is strong enough, I don't think they should have been playing in top 16. What do you think, Memo?
Yeah, I agree. So one thing I want to bring up is the empathy the TO is showing the alleged cheaters, because it just keeps happening. I think the Corval cheater from a couple of weeks ago. One of the first statements from TO was like they have personal issues. There was another player who said something about like that their hand are hurting and that's why they can't shuffle like that. Now we hear bad shuffling habits, whatever that's supposed to mean. Either like you randomize your deck or you don't, in my opinion. So this is something which I kind of like. Don't get me wrong, empathy is a very important and very good value to have. But I think in our like online cEDH tournament meta, I'm not sure if we should show this empathy towards people who blatantly cheat. And that's what it is from my eyes. I've watched so many cheaters in cEDH online tournaments for the last 2 years. I think we're up to a dozen, and this is just textbook cheating, like you said. And I'm getting a little annoyed by this empathy towards them and being like, yeah, they shuffled bad. We told him to focus on shuffling better. And I don't know, I feel really bad for the other 3 players who did everything right. They recorded, they brought it up to the TO, there was enough time. And yeah, the ruling of the judges in the TO was not in their favor, which really sucks.
Yeah, and I think one thing Chaos has brought up is that they don't want to have the public influence their judge's decision, and I do genuinely respect that. I do think that it is important for the judges to act on their own accord without fear of backlash. However, I do think there should be a system in place when their judges make an incorrect call. In my opinion, looking at the evidence, I think this was absolutely an incorrect call. And I think that, like, you know, people are seeing this and they're losing trust in Chaos to make the right decision, especially when we continue having these cheaters. And in the past, like, I was a lot more hopeful because I'm like, okay, well, we catch the cheaters, they're gone, right? But what happens when we catch the cheaters and they're still here? Chaos has said that they're not going to let them play in a tournament until they finish their investigation, but they still have not called them out for cheating. And so I'm not really worried about this player. I don't think this player will be a problem again. I'm worried about future incidents where players bring this up to the judge decides, oh, I think it might be, you know, they maybe empathize with this person and they see an external circumstance as an excuse for breaking rules, right? Like, one of the rules is, of course, the top of your deck must be sufficiently randomized. This deck was not, and they won potentially because of it, right? We can't say for sure, but obviously looks like it.
Most likely. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, this would be, I'm sure, in other formats, I'm sure they would get banned for cheating if this was, you know, if a judge saw this. And so also, it's just hard to trust the organization moving forward, that, like, if I have a cheater in my pod and I bring it up to the judge, and if the judge does nothing, that makes me not want to play in the tournament. So I'm really hoping Chaos addresses this issue.
Yeah, I hope as well, because this will set a very dangerous precedent. I have seen several general chats, YouTube comment sections, on Twitter. People are claiming, like, okay, if this is bad shuffling habit, what's stopping me from entering one of the tournament? Do exactly the same thing, and then just quote them on the last tournament. And yeah, it was bad shuffling habit for that guy, and for me it's just the same, right? Like, this is obviously exaggerated, but you know where I'm coming from, right? If this is
absolutely,
like, from their perspective, not cheating, I'm very worried about the future events. And
and I do want to emphasize, like, I think Chaos is absolutely trying to do the right thing. I don't think they have any, like, bad intentions here. I think they're just trying to do what's right. I just think that they're getting a little bit clouded on some of these details, and like, they need to be very firm on their stance about cheating. And again, this has been brought up time and time again, and they've said they will be firm on cheating. It's just that their actions are not following through their statements about trying to crack down on the cheating issue. So it's tarnishing the reputation of cEDH. I think I'm okay if there's cheaters. I mean, as long as they get caught, right? Like, it's going to happen in any format. If we can catch them consistently, quickly, that can deal with the issue and make it so that they are not influenced to do so. But now, like, again, like you said, what's stopping the next one that said, oh, they got a slap on the wrist, right? They just got DQ'd, they didn't even get banned, and they're not recognized as a cheater from other tournaments, so they can just go up to another tournament, potentially do the same thing, and maybe even get away with it again. But it just doesn't instill confidence.
Whenever this happens, I always emphasize the same quote. The only thing I hate more than a cEDH tournament cheater is a cEDH tournament cheater that gets away with it. Because
Absolutely.
it's not that you, like in 60 card formats where you just screw one over when you cheat. You actually screw 3 other players over, at least 3 other players, right? There are multiple rounds, so potentially even more players. And from my perspective, I would just be harsh, even if you maybe sometimes screw over the one innocent guy who like didn't really cheat. If you don't, like, to save the other 3, do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because I feel like I'd rather be punished and DQ'd for like bad shuffling habits and then get cleared after the tournament and give other 3 players the option to proceed, right? And to not get screwed over, than letting cheaters get away with like bad shuffling habits or like cheating and screw 3 other players over. So I would be encouraging them to just go hard on everything that slightly, or like on everything that's clearly cheating, or on all those rule violations, even if that means maybe that you are maybe a little bit too harsh in the punishment of people who actually have bad shuffling habits, right? But I think especially in the online cEDH tournament, there's so much trust already gone, and I think it needs some very strict measures to regain that trust.
And I mean, I would lastly argue that, like, even if it is a bad shuffling habit, that should be an instant DQ in that case, as far as like how bad that shuffling habit was, right? Like, there's certain things where it's like, okay, like, you know, they shuffled and they forgot to cut beforehand. They just, like, the top of the deck, they're mashing, they're sufficiently like shuffling the deck, and it's a lot closer. But like the top, at least, like, well, obviously looks like at least 15 cards don't change. Like, that is as close to stacking the deck as possible. They never shuffled all piles together. This is just like such a textbook issue of like breaking the rules with shuffling. So yeah. And one other thing I want to say is I myself have been the victim of this in multiple tournaments. Like, I've in Mox Masters June 2022, Derek, the Liberator player who was caught cheating, he beat me on my win and I'd been suspicious of his shuffling after that, and finally, eventually, like, it took a long time of like recording him and finding him, but like he got to another finals with me. And I
also
watching.
lost to several cheaters. I lost a top 16 match to a turn 2 cheater. Just several first rounds. It just, I don't know. It's a bad feeling. It feels bad. You pay, you spend time. And you're excited for the weekend, right? You want to compete, you want to play, and then, like, whenever this kind of stuff happens,
and you spend a lot of time in it, right? Like, you're spending all day, especially in like Wounded Satellite and I both lost to Corval, the cheating player, in the finals match that he won. We were both in there. We both could have won that, right? Like, we spent all day, 14-hour day, competing for this prize, this placement, and the Corval player cheated and won. So it's like, that it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating.
Anyway, to leave on a kind of happy note, so the guy who allegedly cheated, although they did not get banned yet, I'm optimistic that it will happen eventually. I do like that they take their time for those thorough investigations. I agree that DQ should have been imminent, but I think taking the time for a proper ban, for a proper investigation, is the right thing to do. And so far, we don't know if they got cleared or if the ban is still coming down on them. So yeah, I'm still a little optimistic that they will come around eventually.
Moving on to our next segment, Keep of the Week, where we showcase some interesting mulligans so you can improve your mulligan game. We also talk about the thought process going behind it and how the game played out based on those mulligans. So, Memo, can you talk about your keep?
Yes, I'd love to. So I don't want to talk about Najeela every week, believe it or not. I usually play Najeela as like my main deck, like most of you know, but I usually play, I call it my side chick deck. So I alternate another deck, which I like also play occasionally. On some days I play only this one deck, and other days I just play one Najeela game and whatever. Anyway, as of now, this deck is Emiel the Blessed, so a Selesnya control list that tries to control the table with like stacks pieces or certain other pieces and flicker them with Emil to either generate value or to just avoid removal, right? If I have a rule of law in play, like an Archon of Emeria, someone tries to Otawara it or like to swords it, I will flicker it and it stays in play. That's like the general idea, and then there's some infinite mana combos. I went second versus Kinnan and double TNK, and I kept a 7. That was very interesting. That's why I wanted to talk about it. I went into this game with my thought process was every one of them wants to grind. None of them wants to go fast, right? I am fine with that, but I need to find certain pieces to not let them grind too good, if that makes sense.
Right.
So what I kept was Verdant Catacombs, Jeweled Lotus, so turn 1 Emil, a Flooded Strand and a Plains, so a total of 3 lands, a Chromox, a Solitude, and a Hyrex Tower Scout.
Okay.
My thought process was I have a turn 1 Emil, and if I find another white card, I can ditch the Hyrex Tower Scout under the Chromox, and then I could evoke the Solitude on turn 2, and before the evoke sacrifice trigger goes on the resolves, I will activate Emil to flicker the Solitude and have basically double swords on turn 2, and at least 1 swords each turn cycle moving forward.
Yeah,
and from my thinking, it was
powerful.
like there's Kinnan, there's a Kinnan, there's like 2 Tymnas, there's a Crom, maybe an early Crom. So I thought this was a solid keep, and yeah. Well, what do you think about my keep? Do you think it worked out?
I would think so. I mean, being able to cheat in a 5-drop that is going to be repeated removal on the board seems very powerful. I think the issue with this hand could come up if someone removes your Emil, of course, right? Then you're kind of behind. But yeah, I think this seems like a great keep. Obviously, TNK, there's 2 TKs in your pod, so they could bypass it. But, you know, a lot of times they're on the Tymna plan, the Crom plan. They care about their creatures, even if they don't have the synergies for them. That's a lot of times their draw engines. And Kinnan, obviously, if you remove Kinnan over and over, it's going to be hard for them to be in the game. So I think this is a good keep, absolutely.
Yeah. I didn't draw the white card, sadly,
No.
to have a turn with Solitude, but I find the Steedborn Muse.
Ooh.
And then I basically played Turtron Steedborn Muse, because I also found, I think, in another land, a good Ancient Tomb or something. So I was able to like turn to Seedborn Muse, and then just flashed into the Solitude, and then I had Solitude Seedborn Lock.
Yep.
And I got to exile the Kinnan, I got to exile both Tymnas eventually, and tried to set up for a win. And that was a very grindy game. Eventually, the game drew out due to time limit, but I'm still very proud that, I mean, Kinnan and TNK are arguably the 2 best decks to play right now.
Yep.
And I think I had a clutch performance versus all of them on a deck where it was like my 3rd or 4th game.
And
so I wasn't very comfortable on the deck.
Selesnya,
and I still,
right? That's awesome.
No good win codes.
Exactly.
But I hung in there, and and it was very interesting to, once you have like the Solitude effect and the Emil activation on the stack.
Yep.
Decks like Kinnan, like I think Kinnan wanted to do stuff, but he was like, I cannot do anything. I cannot.
Yeah.
I don't even want to activate Kinnan, because if I find the Void Winnow or the Nyxbloom Engine or whatever, you're just gonna exit it, right? And I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm doing it. You spent 7 mana, I spent 3 mana.
Yeah,
so
good luck with that.
Yeah, and I love that, because Kinnan is like such a strong deck, and it's not that easy to stop, right? But on Emil, I felt comfortable going into this matchup with this keep.
I mean, I think that's really cool to have this like non-traditional plan really work out. It's like who's playing Emil right now? But like clearly you can get into these pods where it's like, if you understand the pod makeup, you understand what is powerful, you can use these off-meta cards, these off-meta decks to execute a very, very powerful game plan that's based on synergy rather than card quality. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Also, one thing to mention here, Drake Cesar once gave me a very, very valuable advice, and that was to widen my range whenever there are no stacks on the line. So what I'm usually doing is I will sign up with Najila to tournaments where there's like prizes on the line, or I want to like do well. But I also try to play decks I'm not comfortable with, to widen my range in games where there are no stacks on the line, right?
Totally.
to just learn new mechanics and also like learn new decks. So even if I sign up with Najila at some point, maybe there's a Emil in my pot. Now I play the deck myself, and I hopefully understand the play patterns of the deck, and then therefore can also play better against it.
So what you're saying is people should play Tayam and then Rogsai.
Actually, I think so. Shout out to Fierlo, who is known for being like a Rocksai one-trick pony, but that's actually not true. He played a lot of Tayam before he...
Really? I didn't know that. Okay.
He did. Yeah, I know.
That's cool.
I know.
That's cool. I think it makes you... I do think it makes you a better player. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
Well...
Sweet. Okay, Evan. Let's talk about your keep.
Yeah, so...
Because...
Yeah,
I'm excited to hear.
I had a much better hand than the one I showed you guys last week. So the hand going into the hand in my top 4 of the grand opening tournament at Tavern of Souls Gaming in my locals. We talked about this tournament a little bit earlier. So I was going second against first seat was Ken Ballman on Krakashima. And third seat was Talion, the shop owner. He's very, very good player. And then fourth seat was a Ob Nixilis player. And I kept 2 lands, a Mana Crypt, a Path to Exile, a Chrome Mox, and an Adnaz. This was a 6. I didn't have the second black source, but I was like, all right, turn 2, I'm going to have 5 mana. Likely I'll be able to... this will very likely work out. I just got to draw a black source or something in the next 2 turns. And if not, I could play Timna, I can grind. This is totally fine. Well, my draw turn 1 was Lotus Petal. So, unfortunately, Ken went Volcanic Island Pass. So I'm like, you know what? I think he's got it. I don't care. I'm jamming. There's no way I don't jam here. I'm absolutely jamming. So I cast the Naz, and I literally just look at him like, show me the counterspell. Sure enough, it wasn't even the mana that mattered. He just had Force. So Naz instantly gone. So that hurt. I was like,
you got
I have to
cards out of his hand, right?
Yeah, totally. But and I think to be fair, I think he was the only one who kept a 7. I think everyone else was a little bit lower. So I think there was the other 2 maybe were on 5 or something.
Honestly,
that's
like
but
from the pot composition, I think would have been way worse for you if he has like a turn 1 Croc plus mana.
Yeah.
You jam turn 1 Nos, and then Talion counters your Nos.
Right. Right. Totally.
But at this point, the only player who was in front of you also like dumped 2 cards out of their hand.
Yeah.
So like turn order wise and like cards in hand wise, now the pot is like about even. So it's not like the biggest blowout for you, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing I'd say is that I still have 4 mana, 4 permanent sources. I still have a Chrome Mox, I still have a land, and a Mana Crypt, right? So turn cycle goes around, people develop a little bit. Turn 2, I have Chrome, right? Cool. I have a blocker for my life total, which no longer matters. No, but I have a draw engine, right? So I'm able to get back in the game. People are casting 2 spells and developing, and no one is like popping off that quickly. Like there's an Ob Nixilis, but I think there was a turn 1 Ob, but no one was feeding it that much right away. So yeah, it definitely, I was able to get right back in the game very quickly. And then on turn 3, I ended up having a Phantasmal Image, and I just cast Phantasmal Image, copied the Ob Nixilis, and passed, right? At this point, the Ob had a Cataract Parasite out. Everyone's slowly developing, but there's Cataract Parasite. Ob already has a couple triggers, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I just need to draw more cards. I'm just going to copy this. So immediately draw a couple cards, and there's Italian out. I think Italian on 2. So he's drawing a couple cards, which draws both of us more cards. It wasn't like a crazy amount, but,
okay, I see.
Yeah.
The Parasite triggers both Ob Nixilis, right, on the other 2 players.
Exactly. So I'm getting less than him, but I'm still getting more. And also, again, if Talion's drawing, I'm getting a couple more. So I ended up as it goes around the turn cycle, I think I had 3 cards exiled or something, which is just, draw 3. That's great for 2 mana, right? I cast a Image. That's awesome. And I think I had exiled a Wheel of Fortune, which again, there's a Cataract Parasite, so that's terrible. A Wheel of Fortune, a Tainted Pact, and I think silence or something, I think it was. Yeah, I think, or no, it was miscast. Apologies, it was miscast.
Okay.
So a counter spell, a Tainted Pact, and a Wheel of Fortune. And so goes to Ken's turn, the turn before me. The basically the Obnix had set up, everyone just setting up. Ken taps out for Sakashima, so he's got Kark Sakashima, but he's tapped out now. Obviously, he's already used his Force, so he probably doesn't have a counter spell. I don't know exactly what I'm going for. I don't want to wheel into a Cataract Parasite. I don't have removal. So I cast the Tainted Pact, right? It triggers Talion. He draws a card. That triggers Cataract Parasite. And I exile a Bowmaster. And so now I have a Wheel of Fortune in exile with a Bowmaster, which is winning.
And Tainted Pact on the stack, right?
With Tainted Pact on the stack. So I'm like, okay. And I just go a tiny bit. I grab a Demonic Tutor. And I go to my turn. I'm like, all right, well, I get super blown out here if they have any removal for Ob or Bowmaster, right? Well, no, that's not true. I had triple backup. My draws were like, I drew a Silence, I drew like a Dispel and like a Pact or something. It was something like that. I think I had triple backup. It was like so much. And so what I ended up doing was I tutored for Dockside, and I think I cast Silence at that point. And I made a bunch of treasures, the Dockside count was high, and then of course I just wheel Bowmaster. No one had removal. And the reason that I can't defend my Ob is of course because it is a phantasmal image. So if they target it, I can't do anything about that. It's going to sacrifice anyway, so I don't get to draw cards. But because they just didn't have the removal, my Silence resolved, I could back it up a billion times. They had a counter spell, they just didn't have enough because I just drew a lot.
So just for our listeners and viewers, so you drew, so Wheel resolved, the Bowmaster resolved, Silence resolved, Dockside resolved, Bowmasters resolved, Wheel resolved, you drew 7 new cards, and then you exiled 21 cards?
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Holy so you saw 28 new cards, and you probably still had a couple of treasures left?
Oh, I had plenty of mana. I think I was able to I had enough left over to win easily. I think I just showed them Thoracle Tainted Pact, and that was it. Or Thoracle Console.
Already
console. Yeah. They scooped before I played it out because they saw the win. I figured as much. But so let's go back, right? So this keep was a turn 1 Nas that got countered, got totally blown out. But because it was permanent mana sources, not rituals, I was able to get the turn 2 Crom, and then slowly draw cards, and then I just put another draw engine, right? I copy an Obnix. That's just another draw engine into play on turn 3. And on turn 4, I win the game, right? So it shows that, like, basically, you can get blown out, but just keep playing, just play, like, draw cards as much as possible, just do whatever you can to get back in the game, and sometimes you draw really lucky.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, what's up?
Is there a world where you don't play the main phase Ethnos? Because often I hear people often say TNK is not a main phase Ethnos deck, and maybe like, what was your thought process? Like, I would always jam at main phase, don't get me wrong, but I think it's interesting to elaborate, because if you like because Ken probably cast like turn 2 Krark.
Yeah.
And if you have him maybe on a Swan Song or Flusterstorm or Miscast or whatever, or Spell Pierce effect, you just wait for him to put Krark on the stack, and then you Ethnos in response, and then you untap with like 4 permanent mana, and then it's easier for you to like breach away. And your other 2 opponents are like Dimir and Rakdos. So what was your thought process behind there? 2
reasons that I jam there. Number 1, in my deck, I do feel like main phase Adnaz wins me a lot of games. I often win off of main phase Adnaz. The mana value in that list, I believe, was 1.22. For reference, ROG size mana value, this is average mana value for cards, excluding Adnaz, right? So like per life, I'm going to draw 1.22 cards, right? And in ROG side, some of the main lists, they're about 1.38, which is a significant difference, right? Like I'm going to see, like, when I'm using 35 life, I'm gonna see a few more cards. I don't know the math, but a couple more cards, right? So I'm able to dig a little bit deeper and find a little bit more mana. Rogsai, of course, is able to get more mana because they just have more mana in the deck. However, we're able to dig a little deeper, so it kind of cancels out a little bit. So definitely, as far as like, I think I could win off of main phase Nas, and if not, I'm going to be set up for next turn. I don't want to let other people have mana, but really the consideration here is the 2 more important things are, if I pass and don't cast a Nas, I had to put 5 mana into play and pass the turn. What does that mean? That means I didn't cast Crom, and that means everyone knows I have it. So they will not. They will play around it because we're playing at a top 4 table. There's no way they wouldn't do it. So my options are realistically. There's no way I can't. I cannot hold up mana for Nas. That is the losing play. I either cast Crom or I cast Nas. And casting Crom is fair because if I think someone has something, I get a Crom down. Now I have a draw engine and we're good. The thing is, I don't have a second black source in hand, and also. Let's just make him have it, right? Maybe Ken has a turn 2 Dockside, and that's what he's banking on, not a Swan Song. I've done that too, right? So I think because it's turn 2, I just have to jam and just see if they have it. And especially because I have permanent mana, I'm not out of the game. I can get my commanders down right afterwards and start grinding. So
you meant because it's turn 1 going second. That's what you
turn
meant,
1 going second. Absolutely, yeah. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Because I'm going. Because I'm going second.
Yeah.
So
I agree. Like, don't be scared. We keep saying that, but we actually mean it. Don't be scared. You sometimes get blown out, and you tend to like remember those times you got blown out.
Yep.
But it's very important to understand that just because you got stopped didn't mean it was like the wrong thing to do.
And also both sides, though, I do want to say, like, just because you can doesn't mean you should on the opposite side. I just want to put that out there because it's like, really, this is where the nuance of the game is. It's a game of windows. Is this your window? And if you look at windows, right, where you're most likely that you can win or resolve your payoff when someone can't stop you, it's greatest on the very, very earliest turns of the game. Turn 1, maybe turn 2. So that's why these turbo decks are able to succeed, is because before anyone starts drawing cards, before people get their mana under them, they're tapping out to develop, they're tapping out for Rhystic, they're tapping out for Tymna, they're tapping out for Kark. They are not able to hold up their counter magic they might have in hand, so they don't have the resources to actually cast them. There could be free counter magic, but they haven't had a lot of cards to draw it, so it has to be in their mulligans, right? So realistically, that window is the greatest early. Just make them have it, and then it closes pretty quickly. And then if you're a deck that can grind, then get your resources up, get enough protection like we saw in turn 4. I had like quadruple win or maybe triple win backup, whatever. I had a lot of backup for a very powerful play. Maybe my ob dies, I can't back that up, but at least I have a Bowmaster, a wheel, tons of mana, like I'm and a silence. Like I'm going to be set up to win that game. And so I think you just got to realize that, like, really evaluate these windows that you're going for, and it's like early is best because, like I said, they're not set up. But if you think they have it, and you realistically do, and there's a high chance that they have it because they all have been open, they've been passing, doing nothing. It's turn 3 now. Maybe you are losing the game because you cast this. Your window has closed. So, you know, I think really I guess all I'm saying is just think about the odds, right? When people have only seen 7 cards, my opponent's seen 7 cards, they're on a low mulligan. The odds are much lower that they have it versus a little bit later in the game.
For our next segment, we're going to talk about some upcoming events.
The event Memo and I are both going to is Punt City 3. This is April 6th in Philadelphia. So very excited. This is going to be a 180 person event. So really large event, 5K in prizes, and a lot of the big cEDH community members are going to be there. So really excited. Memo and I finally get to meet in person. So should be super fun.
It's going to be so great.
Yep.
I'm low-key hoping to drop so I can spend time with people and like talk to people and take pictures with them, and I don't know. Yeah, I hope. I'm super excited, and
don't worry, Memo. The LobbyCon is the reason we go, and there'll be plenty of time.
Yep. I'm excited to be part of LobbyCon.
Have you ever vintage cubed?
Nope, not yet.
Okay, well, you're going to for this one, so
yeah, I know.
Be ready.
Our good friend Rocketman already locked me up for vintage cube.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
gonna be
100%.
I'm super hyped for it. Yeah, and also like for me, going to the US the first time in my life, and then going to a cEDH event, and then it's the cEDH tournament, right?
Yep.
And cEDH like from what I have seen in the last couple of years, it's the most famous one. It's always sold out immediately.
Sold out in 21 minutes.
Insane, unbelievable. Yeah, you guys are
unbelievable.
Crazy. Yeah, that's gonna be great. And yeah, I'm just super excited. 5 more weeks.
Me too.
Already got my visa and everything, and I already I also printed like the Nagila deck on NPC because I got a lot of like the original Japanese valuable cards I have. I haven't made up my mind yet because I also love playing my original cards, but it's just like with the traveling and stuff.
Yeah,
so
it's scary.
We'll see. Maybe I'll just bring the NPC deck, and because thankfully the Top Deck GG is hosting proxy-friendly events, so it's not always about like for people who have the money or don't have the money. It's also for like traveling, right?
Right.
Some people just don't feel comfortable like traveling with a 20k deck.
I know.
And I think
yeah, it's a lot.
allowing the proxy rule is a very cool thing to get around those fears.
Totally. That's it for our podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. And you can find us on Discord or Twitter for our coaching services. Both of us offer coaching. If you have any comments about anything we talked about, the lying, the cheating, oh God, this sounds terrible. Please leave a comment down below and subscribe. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.